Hi, Andrew from Sachs, and welcome to video number 8 in our 9-video sequence on stakeholder management. This one's all about leadership, and I'm going to argue very strongly that stakeholder management is an act of leadership. What is a leader? A leader is a person that people want to follow. And the unique characteristic of stakeholder engagements is that typically they're not people who we can tell what to do. They're not people who we can say, you must do this. So ultimately what we have to do is to cause them to want to follow us in a particular outcome or objective or whatever. So let's talk about stakeholder management as an act of leadership. In particular, I want to talk about 3 models of leadership. You can interact with stakeholders in a top-down fashion. So that's me, I'm interacting with this stakeholder and I'm telling that person what to do. That can be, of course, an incredibly useful and important thing to do as a stakeholder leader, because what it may mean is that, yes, our policy is this. I'm sorry, we can't diverge from that. This is how we do things, or it's illegal to do something else, or whatever. There are also times when we need to consult stakeholders. So I'm going to go out and ask these stakeholders' opinions, but as a consultant, I'm the one that makes the decisions. I have the authority to make that decision ultimately. The third model of leadership is facilitation. And facilitation is where I am the leader, but I am bringing together this group of, let's say, 10 stakeholders. And you'll notice that I'm breaking them up into small groups and I'm causing them to interact on a challenge or an opportunity. How are we going to address this challenge? How are we going to overcome this challenge? Or how are we going to pursue this opportunity? Now, the point is that when you lead as a facilitator, you do not bring the solution. What you bring is a process where you're causing people to interact to come up with a solution, and you tell them that you will back their solution. In stakeholder management, this can be incredibly powerful. You cause people to come together and you say, okay, we have this opportunity or we have this challenge. Let's get together in small groups, and the small group bit is very important because not everybody is comfortable to speak in front of a large group, but even the most introverted person may be comfortable to speak in front of a small group, and they can use a more confident person to report back to the whole group, to the larger group. That's why these small group interactions are important, but it can be done in larger groups. I mean, personally, I've done it with groups of 200-300 people and have tables of 10 or 15 or something like that. The small group activity sponsors diversity, but it also gives shyer people a feeling of confidence of being able to participate. A practical way of doing this is that you cause the 3 groups to interact and come up with solutions. And one of the ways that you can do this is you can cause them to report their solution, let's say on a whiteboard, either a physical whiteboard if you're in the one room, or flip charts or something like that, or you can do it digitally in a Zoom meeting or something like that. And then what you do is you get people to vote for the solution. And that's a really important thing. One of the golden rules of effective facilitation is to give up on the idea of consensus. If something's truly worth discussing and resolving, do you automatically get consensus? I think the pursuit of consensus can cause people to become very frustrated, because you can end up with this thing called consensus by fatigue, where people simply give up on arguing, yeah, I'll go along with it. It's far better to tell people, majority wins here, 51% wins, and so we all come up with our ideas and then we're going to vote for the ideas. But imagine you get a group of stakeholders together, you present them with a challenge or an opportunity, you tell them what's going to happen before they come, and you facilitate a process where in small groups they discuss the challenge or the opportunity, come up with ideas, and then vote for the solutions. And you might pick out 2 or 3 of the best solutions, but then actually cause the stakeholders to do the solutions. That's the secret. It's a change management technique which is based on heavy levels of empowerment. The value of this technique is that if you use simply top-down or consultation techniques, which most people do, then you're missing the opportunity for a form of interaction which has the highest levels of engagement. So in studies of engagement, which means I want to do this stuff, I care about it, I'm going to try hard, levels of engagement are much higher where you've had this form of facilitative interaction. I mean, if you come up with an idea and people don't like it, that can cause you to have an alienating effect on your stakeholders. If they hear their trusted colleagues come up with exactly the same idea, they're much more likely to accept it because it's been done in an open discussion, and also there's greater diversity of the sources of where that argument came from. Very powerful technique. But then there's the question of how do you do this? And we suggest a simple sequence. and we call it the drop technique. The first bit is destination setting. Destination setting is when you get the stakeholders together. One of the mistakes that people often make is, okay, what are we going to do? Well, what are you trying to achieve? And I think that's a really, really powerful way to start any interaction with stakeholders, even just a one-on-one. I mentioned earlier in the sequence of videos, if you're going to ring somebody, tell them why you've rung them and get their okay about, is that what they want to achieve? And if they want to achieve something else, factor that into your stakeholder interaction. But in a destination setting exercise with a group of people, let's say you've got a challenge. Okay, well, we've got this challenge, but where do we want to be when we've dealt with this challenge? And I don't mean it in a theoretical sense. The more concrete you can make it, like here are the people that we'll need to interact with. Here's the dollars that we will need to be able to achieve this. Here's the outcome that we will need to achieve. Let's say you were going to restructure something. Well, what's a good structure? Let's be really clear on what we're moving towards. The clearer you can be, we know from studies of the human brain that if people have a clear shared destination, that destination kind of draws them towards it. So people will start changing their behaviours and they will start pursuing whatever is necessary to reach that destination. But as well as that, it gives you a chance to measure your progress towards that destination. Really powerful neurologically. The second is the reality check. The reality checking is a way of quantifying how close we are to that destination. So that could be, you've come up with a destination, let's say it's a project, and you're going to define what the end product will be as clearly as possible. Well, how close are we to it now? So again, if you rate it out of 10 and you get everybody to do this, if we're currently a 3 and at the end we want to be an 8, then that means we've got a lot of work to do. If we're an 8 and we want to be a 9, it means fine tuning, a really useful thing to do. And the reality checking, one of the reasons that I recommend using numbers to do this stuff is that that's a new brain. See the earlier video if you're interested in this, new brain versus old brain way of doing it. Creating numbers for things causes people to be reflective, and that causes them to be more broad-minded. Now, if you're trying to learn something new, feedback from a guide or coach can be useful only when you're brand new at it. But once you start to become skilled at something, learning the self-evaluation skill, that's a meta-learning technique which will stand you in good stead throughout the rest of your learning journey. The next is option creation. And going back to the model of facilitative leadership, you're facilitating people to come up with the options. You're causing them to decide which of the options is best. Option creation in this sense can be very powerful as a sense of brainstorming. So, no idea is a bad idea. If you want people to be creative, take away the evaluation component in the discussion. That's going to come later. Of course, we will evaluate. But when you're creating ideas, the best way of doing it is entirely creatively rather than evaluatively. So people come up with the ideas, just capture them, write them down. And if you're doing it in small groups, encourage people to do that. Don't evaluate the ideas at this stage, just come up with them. And then the planning, doing and reflecting is about evaluating the ideas. And that's where you might get all of the ideas up on a screen or on a board or something like that and literally vote for them. So just one vote, or maybe you do it a 3-2-1, 3 for your favourite idea, 2 for your second favourite idea, 1 for your third favourite idea. But that can be a way of distilling an extremely wide range of information down to, let's say, 3 solutions, or 4 or something like that. But the point then is the doing and reflecting bit is where we assume responsibility for whatever it is that's been agreed. So let's say somebody's going to build a plan. All right, this person's going to lead the building of the plan. Who's going to help them? When's it going to be done by? This can be really powerful as a change management technique because what you've done is you've drawn the solutions from the group, which ensures that they're engaged. You're causing the group to be actively involved in doing the solutions, but then what you're doing is you're creating an agreed plan, which everybody knows about where we go to from here. And that can be a really powerful thing to cause people to feel confident that the whole undertaking is moving in the right direction. And then from time to time, you get together and you see how it's going, and you might have to use multiple stakeholder meetings to achieve a big thing, but it's a way of keeping the entire thing on track. Destination setting, reality checking, creating options, planning, doing, and reflecting. And the reflecting bit is after each of these attempts had been made. Let's say we're going to meet in 2 weeks, you get together and say, how did it go? And you fine tune. You may actually need to fine tune the destination from time to time as well. This is a simple technique for facilitative leadership. The final video in this 9-video sequence will be about stakeholder mapping. We'll be showing you a very simple method for stakeholder mapping and action planning. Click on the link near this video to join us.